And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Bever. He is Mark Messina. We are excited to be back after the weekend. I have some stories on here that we were very quiet this morning. We didn't talk as much as we normally do. I have a story about a kid who was arrested for a tweet. Wait till you hear the tweet. You're going to like this. You'll like this story. Amazon is laying off more people. A fire fraud update. There's an FTX update. I want to talk to you about Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. There's a lot of different things going on. Mark, how was your weekend?
I can't answer that quickly.
This means your weekend was either really good or really bad. Oh, wow. Rough one. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
Good.
You should have told me. We could have laid you down on the couch before we started.
Listen, if I laid down on the couch, I'd fall asleep. I just want people to know that the hassle that comes with being on a almost Emmy-nominated, soon to be Emmy-nominated show. Okay. You can't go anywhere now without
that's true.
Without being spotted.
That's true. Yeah. People, but you run into it too. I mean, occasionally, like someone will say, like, "Hey, we."
I don't. Have I thought? Well, just that you were in Bloomsburg, of all places.
Yes.
And the waitress, you said, or the hostess.
The hostess, yeah. Someone, as I was walking out, the person was kind of. Like,
she screamed, like it was the Beatles.
Happened. Yeah.
And she came running up and threw her arms around your neck and said, "You're Jeff."
Yeah. Which, by the way, really, really, if you've never been to Marley's in Bloomsburg, just like a short little plug, which not paid, short little plug for Marley's, really, really good. It's on Route 11. It was delicious.
I will say this.
God.
The strangest thing I ever had of that being recognized from radio.
Yeah.
Because in radio, you hear the voice. And isn't it, I mean, for all of us who've ever met a radio personality in person the first time, and you're like, that's not what I pictured for the voice. So, I had a lady stop me once in Sam's Club, and it always fascinated me that women listen to me and Chris Massey talk about sports. Because I'm like, why are you listening to us? So I had a lady stop me in Sam's Club, and she was, at the time, this was a decade ago, and I'll bet she was mid-50s, which even shocked me more.
Sure.
Like, why would old, sophisticated, intelligent people listen to us? I was buying a girl's softball helmet for my daughter.
Okay.
And they have the face mask already attached, so you just kind of pull it off by the face. And I'm looking for ones that fit and whatever, and then with the hole, which ones are. And we're at Dick's. This is obviously way back when Dick's was still in the mall. And there was a shelf. As the shelves were and as the helmets went, the one shelf, the helmet didn't just slide right in.
Okay.
It hit. And after I learned, you just had to push on it, and it would go. And then so there was this other lady with her little daughter, and we're getting pink helmets out and purple helmets out, trying to figure out what. And she got to that shelf, and she tried to put it back in, and it wouldn't go. And she just kind of stopped. And I said, "If you push on it hard, it'll go." And she pushed on it, and then she looked at me. She goes, "I know who you are."
Okay.
And I was like, just from the voice?
Yeah.
So that was weird.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
The voice thing's weird. I was at a wedding this past summer, and if he hears this story, I think he'll get a kick out of it. And Gary Chrisman was at the wedding.
Okay.
And so anybody who lives in our area, it might be the most noticeable voice.
Yes, in central Pennsylvania, without a doubt.
A, because he's done it for a very long time. B, because it is just such a distinguishable voice.
He has a great radio voice.
Very recognizable.
Yes.
And so one of my friends was the best man, and I was saying, "You got the speech ready?" I'm asking him about it, and Gary Chrisman walks in to kind of like the cocktail hour, and I'm like, if you really wanted to have a memorable speech, you would walk over to Gary Chrisman right now, and you would say, "How much for you to give the best man speech?" And then at the beginning of it, you would say, I wanted to make a memorable speech for my friend, and I couldn't figure out the best way. So what I decided to do was I rounded up enough money, and we paid Gary Chrisman to give the speech. Gary, come on up. And that would have been incredible, right? I mean, that's the best
It would have been funny.
Yes. So yes, there is something about.
He didn't do it.
He didn't do it. No. We didn't even ask Gary to do it. But there is something about, there are voices that you recognize, and some are radio, like you said. I have voices in my friend groups and in my family groups that, like, I can hear them. I can be in a crowded bar. I can be at a family event. There can be 100 people in a room, and I can pick their voice out of it all.
Because
out of all the mumble jumble.
It's piercing.
Something. And my girlfriend and I joke about, like, how different people in our groups have. There's always that one person that just has, like, the defining voice that just kind of, like, cuts through everybody else's. Do you have that or not? You don't notice it as much. I've heard parents and kids, like, sometimes kids and parents.
You can recognize, yes.
Yes, I've been told that. Like, you can have 100 kids, but, like, it's like sonar, like radar, when your kid, like, says something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
Interesting. My weekend was filled. I stopped at Bloomsburg. The reason we stopped in Bloomsburg, we went to the Crayola factory. Have you ever been to the Crayola factory?
Isn't that in Easton?
It is in Easton,
oh,
yes.
Okay.
Crayola Experience is what it's called. Really, really neat. If you have kids under the age of, like, if you have preschool kids, really, really neat place to go. Because a lot of times,
under the age of 22?
Not under the age of 22. If you, I think sometimes it's hard to find stuff. Like, you go to theme parks and a 5-year-old can't do everything, right? This Crayola thing's kind of neat because everything is basically designed so that every kid can do it. So, like, my one niece is 2 now, and she could do everything there, which is pretty neat.
Speaking of those things, and just to twist it into Christmas, and did we talk about last week when Joe Smith was in that it's a Christmas Story house is up for sale. Did we talk about that?
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about that to a friend of mine,
Okay.
and he said, I've been there.
Okay.
And I was like, what do you mean you've been there? He was at a wedding in Cleveland.
Okay.
And he said it is a short ride from Cleveland. It's in a suburb, and they went, and he said it is small.
Okay.
He said, I don't know how they filmed anything in it.
Yeah.
But when you went inside it, it was an old, small little house.
Okay.
And then there's the gift shop, and he's like, we did the whole 9 yards.
Sure.
But it was just funny because I can't imagine in my life I know more than 3 people who've been there. Like, really, people I interact with. And it was right after we told the story. He goes, oh, we were there. I was at a wedding in Cleveland. So while we were here, we went.
Yeah. You're a lot better at that than me. I never think about when I'm traveling to see what else, like to see what's on the way there or to stop. Like, I'm just not one of those, like, sightseers.
See, I don't really travel that much.
Okay.
That's the whole.
But when you do, you always say to me, like, I looked it up and there's this thing or there's that thing.
Yeah.
You're pretty good about sightseeing.
I try to, although I've still never been to the Statue of Liberty, which is.
Have you seen it though, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you're close, you can't not see it.
Right.
I've never been to Ellis Island. I can't. I don't know. It's one of those things I've never been to Wrigley Field. That embarrasses me too.
The Ellis Island one, trying to think how to say this without sounding alarming. If you've never been to Ellis Island, you might want to go sooner rather than later.
It's decaying?
It's old. It's an island. It's off the coast. Like, you just.
Do you know what color it was originally?
No, what color?
I thought it was.
Wait, are we talking about
the statue?
You're talking about the statue. Okay. It wasn't the green that it's turned now.
No, wasn't it copper?
I can't remember, but it was not this.
It has. This is it's rust basically. Not rust isn't the word I'm looking for.
Has something to do with the water and
yeah.
I'm sure 5th graders could tell us all.
They probably could.
They probably.
But yeah, it was not green.
Let's talk about some things some 5th graders can't tell us about. I just had a list of stuff here. I'm going to go down through. The first one I'm going to start with. Remember the Fyre Festival that I had told you about?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay. Did you ever end up?
I watched the documentary,
and it is. If you've never watched it yet, it is a great watch. Fyre Festival. There's one documentary on Netflix. There's another one on Hulu. So Billy McFarland, the guy who basically set up the whole scheme, I guess you could call it.
Okay.
He just got out of jail.
Was he in for that?
So he was in for that.
Okay.
Yes. He was also in for other things. He was faking ticket sales. He was manipulating a whole bunch of stuff. He is officially out now, and he wants to essentially repay the people in the Bahamas by doing another venture there. And the Bahamas saying, we're good.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Thanks, but no thanks, we're good. So his new thing, it by the way, went to Bucknell.
I never knew that.
Yes, actually went to Bucknell. I don't think he graduated from Bucknell, but there are videos of him like giving presentations at Bucknell for like specific classes.
But he's not from Pennsylvania, correct?
No, I don't believe so.
That is awesome.
But he was a Bucknell student for a certain time. He's starting this thing called now PYRT. So if you remember, the Fyre Festival was FYRE.
Right.
So his new venture is PYRT, and it's supposed to be like a play on words for pirate, is what it's supposed to be. And essentially what he's trying to do is kind of like this meta, like you're at the Bahamas, but you're not really at the Bahamas. Music people come online, you put the goggles on, it's like you're there. So they're performing there, but you're not really there, this whole thing. So Billy McFarland is back in the world. Again, if you haven't watched the Fyre Festival, please do it. Apparently, he already has one investor that is already like bought into it, like that has already given him money to like set out on this venture, which to me is absolutely fascinating that anybody would give this guy a substantial amount of money.
No, I agree.
I get someone wanting, like if he was like, hey, I want to start a Starbucks, and some guy that he had worked with before felt bad, and they were like, here's $100,000 to get started, like go ahead and try to be a franchisee. For anybody to give him a substantial amount of money to really venture out and try to do an entrepreneurial thing blows my mind. Sorry, not the.
I was going to say that part of his problem, if you've never seen the documentary on the Fyre Festival, and again, like Jeff said, it's a Fyre. You just keep watching it saying, there's this part of you that this can't be real, but I knew it was real.
Yes.
So I knew it was real. But it can't get worse. Right. And then it does. And then it does. And it is, you can't take your eyes off of it. What a cluster this became. Yes. But part of the reason of the cluster is he was such a good marketer, and the brilliance in how he marketed it, he was just more successful than he can handle. And it was almost like the restaurant. They're like, we're opening the restaurant, we're going to advertise everywhere, and now you have so many people that show up and you have no seats.
A friend of mine said the idea was better than the execution.
Exactly.
And so it's not so much that the idea was insane. It was a good idea. They tried to do it too quickly. They clearly had no actual idea of how to do something like this. But the actual concept, and I just can't believe, like, because we just went through the FTX stuff, which there's a small note I have down here about that today. We just went through the FTX stuff and the crypto. We went through the Fyre Festival stuff. The Elizabeth Holmes, I told you, they're finalizing her whole deal. She's finally going to be sent to jail, should be sent to jail. I just can't believe we should have.
I got to ask this. Which one's Elizabeth
Theranos. She's
the blood chick?
The blood chick.
Thank you.
I just can't believe that we're still giving substantial amounts of money to like any tech or science person under the age of 30. I just feel like they shouldn't be allowed to get a substantial amount of money. Like if I were a hedge fund manager, I think one of the rules.
Well, yes, the intelligent people don't, but don't you think that there's?
But that's who's giving these people this money.
Yeah, but not
like the Theranos lady was getting money from like people that were part of the Fed. It was real money.
No, I get that, but that was back then, and now that she got exposed, as more of these people are getting exposed and failing, I would think it would be harder. That giving this kid money is shocking, but don't you think it's like this belief of hope that you're like, why? You know, people that dive back, they go back into the relationship again because it's going to be better this time because they just have this hope. And I was watching some documentary about one of the cults and this lady who'd broken away from it. And she's away from it again. And she's talking about like, you know, what it was. And he talked to her on the phone and she said all these things and I'm not going. And this is why, and this is why, and this is why. And then the interviewer said, but you went back. She's like, well, yeah, because he told me and he's convincing. And so some people are duped. Some people, it's not that they were stupid enough to believe what the bill of goods that they were sold, but they really, really want to believe the bill of goods that they're sold. Sure. And again, this is business. We see it in personal relationships all the time, all the time. That people are like, you know, I'm going to be different this time. No, they're not. And and then they go back again.
Sure.
And then they can't understand why it didn't work. And then they're,
Okay.
So anyway.
Well, when we start our hedge fund, because that's the first goal is to win the Emmy now that we've been almost nominated. So eventually we'll be nominated, we'll win. Eventually we'll get there. Years from now when we have our hedge fund, one of the rules I'm putting in place is we are not giving substantial money to anybody in a new field under the age of 30. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. It's shown time and time again you can't do it.
That's fine with me.
We can give them we can give them a check, but we're not giving them the boat.
You know what?
Not giving them the boat.
You know what the number one investment?
I need to hear you say we're not giving them the boat.
We're not the boat.
Thank you.
Why we're the boat?
Just we're not giving them the boat. We'll give them a check. We'll dip our toe in, but we're not turning the boat.
The number one investment in our hedge fund,
yes,
will be the Dallas Cowboys in the 2023 Super Bowl. I should offer my apologies for the fourth quarter last night.
That's okay. We're not good. We don't even have a head coach.
Do you know this? I should say this. I didn't know this till during the game.
Yes.
Which I did not watch very much of because.
For anyone who doesn't know, the Dallas Cowboys smacked the Indianapolis Colts.
Yes.
Continue. Not until the fourth quarter, though.
Jeff Saturday was a consultant.
Yes.
That he was like doing scouting and player evaluation. So they said he was watching film he was paid by the organization and he was watching film on the Colts every day. Mm-hmm. So this whole thing like, oh, he's a high school coach and they just brought him in because he used to play here.
Yeah.
Well, he did, and he was, but he was also evaluating their talent every day.
Good. My thing is I don't care what your name is. I don't care who you are. To take over an NFL team halfway through the season is an impossible job. There's no way you're able to do the things the other organizations are doing. And then on top of it, you're taking over a team that isn't very good. So to say it's nothing, I'm not saying it against Jeff Saturday. I'm just saying in general, it's an impossible position to be in. I don't care who you are. My critique is not of Jeff Saturday. I get it. My critique is of the position that he is in.
I get it.
It's an impossible thing. I found this story and I said, yep, this is a Mark story. Student arrested.
Oh, that reminds me.
Student arrested after calling Nigeria's first lady fat on Twitter. So
hold on. Now I need to clarify.
Go ahead.
Was it PHAT?
It was not PHAT. He'd probably be a free man, PHREE, if he had. A human
That was very clever. I like that.
Human rights groups have called for the release of a student who has been arrested for allegedly insulting Nigeria's first lady in a tweet. He was arrested on the 8th of November. He tweeted that she had gotten fatter by eating masses of money. The 23-year-old was picked up on a campus and was taken to the northern state of, I hope I get this right, Jigawa. It is not clear about the specific charges, if any, Aminu is being held under.
1.21 gigawatt.
Yeah. How many times did you call your teachers fat? Just get it out there. Just put it out there.
I never.
Your teachers don't watch this.
Maybe it's because I didn't have any fat teachers.
What'd you call them? You called them something, though. What did you call your teachers? Old.
Like to their face?
Old. Dumb. This wasn't to their face, though. This was a tweet.
Well, I never tweeted about a teacher. I can honestly say that.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
That's a good. I don't know. I don't know. I was a pretty good student. I didn't really fight with. I was not a rebellious teenager. It didn't.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I was looking for that. I don't know. I wasn't an angry teenager. I wasn't a rebellious teenager. Okay. I was just kind of so I didn't.
So we had the story, was it Mahanoy area? Remember the cheerleader who on her Snapchat? This is, to go to jail for a tweet. To say
what country again?
This is in Nigeria.
Oh.
Yes, Nigeria. 23 years old, tweeted that she was fat, gets picked up, and now human rights groups have to fight for them to be released. I don't know. You didn't seem as into that as I had hoped.
No,
it was? This is just so everyone knows the world that I live in with Mark. I find a really cool story, and I'm like, oh, Mark's gonna love this. Some dude got arrested for tweeting out that the Nigerian first lady.
Well, it was in Nigeria.
And I find this really neat story for you. And then all you can do the entire time is try to find the story you want to talk about in the 30 tabs you have lined up on your screen.
Hold on.
So that's what it's like doing something with Mark. No matter what you try to do for him.
I might have 30 tabs open. That is not inaccurate. Secondly, I will say here's where it's in Nigeria. What kind of laws do they have there? Give me the system. Do they? I didn't even know they had jails. I don't know. So anyway, that is if it happened in
stop trying to save yourself, because here's what's even better. I'm gonna have you tell the story that was so important that you had to find it. So go ahead.
Well, this is why.
Please tell us the story that you had to completely ramshock that entire thing. Go ahead.
And this is why you'll get to why it's important, because immediately when I came across this clickbait, the headline says, "How long should sex last? Here's what sex therapists say." And this is totally, so I am like, and I'm scrolling, and I'm scrolling. This is a 1-sentence article. Like, give me a time frame.
Okay.
And the answer is something like 5 to 19 minutes.
Okay.
I was like, oh, that is earth shattering. Yeah. Thank you for that revelation.
So what's the moral of the story there?
Then I got sucked in.
The moral of the story
by the title
is to stay away from clickbait.
No. That's not the moral of the story. I'm just saying that some titles are a little more deceptive than how do you see? This is where you're a better person than I am. How do you not? That is like, I will remember that forever. 5 to 8. Like, I thought they were going to come out and have some scientific and say 11 and a half.
Here's my rule with clickbait, and this might actually, this would help you and maybe some other people. If I myself would not take the time to Google it, I don't click on it. So when I go,
someone's already Googled it for you.
So but that's what I'm saying is, so when I go across that, if it's not interesting enough for me to go open up another tab and type in what should the average, like, then it's not worth clicking on. If I do, then I go to Google and I type in what I want to see, and I find like a legitimate source for what I am looking for. That's what I do with clickbait.
And I get that. And that is a rational, intelligent approach. And here is what I find funny about the last exchange you had. You said that you could help me with clickbait. I don't want help.
You know what that's called? An addiction.
I have the addict that loves it.
That's called an addiction.
You know what clickbait is? It's delicious.
Complete side note. I started Dope Sick on Hulu finally.
I've heard of it.
It's about the opioid epidemic with OxyContin and the Purdue pharmacy people.
This is a couple years old?
Oh my gosh. This is decades.
Then I remember this.
Yeah, because this started like mid-90s is when the whole kind of thing started. So I finally dove into it, flew through the first 2 episodes. Really, really well done. The cast is loaded. It's on Hulu. Incredibly informational. Gives you like a real backdrop to how Purdue Pharma destroyed the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of Americans, basically just cheating the system. It's really, it's a good watch. So if you get a chance, Dope Sick, really, really well done.
It's a series or just one?
It's a series, but it's only a 1-season series. Knock it out, but it's really well done. Also, too, a lot of people don't know this. It wasn't the entire country. It was really like pockets, and Pennsylvania was one of those like hit hard.
Oh, yeah.
Because they went like they did Kentucky, they did West Virginia, they did Pennsylvania. They tried to find places with hard labor. So like people on minimum wages that did hard labor, where doctors would be able to prescribe this stuff to them. So it's not like this far off story. It is, because God forbid I give you a story from Nigeria. Well, there was this Dope Sick thing was right in kind of the backyard of Pennsylvania.
There was a coalition that when I was coaching before, we had to go. And I can't remember what it was called, but it was like they came around and talked to people about warning signs. Because one of the things about that epidemic was that it was white middle class. It was, your neighbor. Sure. And we always picture, drug addicts. We picture like, inner city and all, and that's and poor. And this was essentially people who were recovering from either surgery or injury or something and got hooked.
A lot of work-related injuries, right? Like local doctors. I think they're referring to this. Was it Project Bald Eagle?
Yes.
What you're referring to?
That's
there
it.
You go. Good call. So one of the things, I'll give away a little bit of the story, and I did not know this until I watched it, but they dive into it near the second episode. So I'm young enough that I've always thought that hospitals had the little like 1 through 10 charts. Do you know what I'm referring to? So what's your pain? Tell us what your pain is. 1 being the least, 10 being the most, everything else. Those charts were created by Purdue Pharma, and they were used because doctors would then be able to tell you this is the dosage of OxyContin. Yes. So one of the things that like, okay, so it's a little bit like you and I have talked before where like sometimes people who do bad things or stuff like that, like there are things they do that are ingenious, right? One of the ingenious things that Purdue Pharma did was they basically were able to attach your pain tolerance to their meds. So when they held up the chart, if you gave an answer, essentially you were getting OxyContin. So if you said anything above a 1, 10 milligrams of Oxy. If you said a 6, 20 mil, like, and that was one of the genius things that they did. One of the things that was the downfall of Purdue Pharma was they didn't put any of their branding on the chart. And so as they were marketing this stuff and pushing it out, obviously it always said OxyContin, it always said Purdue Pharma. Essentially, one of the ways that they were able to in court prove it was if you really were, like if this wasn't a bad thing, like if you were proud of this, you would have put Oxy all over it. You would have put Purdue Pharma all over it. So it ended up being one of their downfalls. But to this day, like if you walk into a doctor's office, like they still have, you can find like those 1 through 10, like what
they ask you
all the time.
Yeah.
And that was a Purdue Pharma thing for OxyContin. Really, it's a fascinating story.
You know what else is funny is people's, especially if you don't do it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And you know how people interpret. I remember a guy I knew, his wife, there's something wrong with his wife. I don't remember what the injury was, and they asked her what her pain threshold was, and she gave a really low number.
Okay.
And he looked at the doctor and he said she had natural childbirth with no drugs and said the pain was a 5.
Okay.
So keep that in mind on your relationship scale.
Well,
so
one of the benefits, because they were in Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, one of the things that when they did this chart was they realized like farmers, for example, or coal miners, whoever it may be, a lot of farmers in Pennsylvania have Lyme's disease and don't even know it because their tolerance of pain is so much higher than that of the individual who wakes up every morning and sits down at a computer. Like it just is. It is what it is. So one of the things that they noticed was the chart is skewed because in order for these people to say like they have pain, they need them to feel like the chart is higher up than what it is.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting story.
You know, generally speaking, women tolerate pain better than men.
They have to, right? I mean, genetically, they would have to, I would assume.
I guess.
Given just childbirth and childbearing
I
and
think
everything
there's that's the immediate thought. Okay. But I mean, it also just has to be with mental makeup.
Well, isn't there some Darwinism into it too? Because if you go through essentially like the weaker the species, the more tolerable of pain they are because you have to be. So I think there's some Darwinism, not to put, it's just physiology wise.
Did you know this?
Are a little smaller, so their pain for tolerance.
So I'm going to tell you, I was flipping through something, and I didn't grab a title. I probably watched 5 minutes of it.
Okay.
This guy was talking about that back in the day, there were multiple forms of human species. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just like this one, evolution or whatever your belief system is, and that he thought that I think the whole topic was our innate instinct to fight, and that our species survived because we were the nicest, and we could get along with each other where the other ones couldn't.
It's possible. My understanding of it, because we're not scientists, my understanding of it is Homo sapiens essentially won out. The debate of why they won out is up for grabs. But see, like to your point originally, I think most people just assume they were all Homo sapiens.
Right.
And it was and that is not the case at all.
And you would think too that like, it's like a war, the toughest one wins.
Yeah.
And it was that we didn't fight amongst each other.
Yeah.
We,
cooperative.
much more hunters and gatherers than warriors.
Yeah.
So interesting.
It is interesting. I just have 2 quick things here that I wanted to mention. Have you seen the Netherland farm stuff?
No.
Let
me take that back. Of course I have.
Of course
I was just there.
Well, it's closer than Nigeria. Is it closer than Nigeria?
Yes.
It's probably closer than Nigeria.
Yes.
So the Netherlands farms, they are now, by the way, you did see this because we talked about it briefly. The farmers were blocking the roadways. Do you remember this? It was part of their strike. So now the Netherlands, they are forcibly set to close over 3,000 farms to comply with EU mandate for basically climate change, emissions, trying to meet those quotas. Everyone's trying to meet those quotas by 2025, 2030, depending on what your goals were. They're going to close over 3,000 farms forcibly. As of right now, the Dutch government is saying that the offer they're going to give to these farmers is well worth it. But obviously the farmers, it's their land, it's their livelihood. For a lot of them, it's generational. It's gone through. A lot of people don't realize this either. Netherlands, second in the world in the farming industry as far as imports and exports. So what?
Really?
Yes.
I thought it was a tiny little place.
No, second in the world. So 3,000 farms, second in the world. We had already talked about the wheat failure. That's already begun this winter because of Ukraine. Now the Netherlands is talking about shutting down these 3,000 farms. It is, I don't know, and I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough to be able to sit here and say like it's dumb. I don't know. It feels a little bit like you're spiting yourself.
Yeah,
it feels like
the timing of it.
It feels like you're trying to hit these emission numbers, and so in order to hit them, we're just gonna like knock out the second greatest industry in the world for farming. It's a very unique case where like sometimes maybe hitting the quotas or hitting the numbers isn't always the most important thing, but we're going to find out here if Netherlands goes through with it. 3,000 farms. The other thing that I had written down here, FTX, it's official. It came out, and I know you don't care about this as much as I do, but I find it fascinating. It is officially being recognized that they did not buy a single Bitcoin during this time.
Yeah, you told me that. And
that is, to me, I can't even think of the example. It would be like Nike never actually making a shoe. I mean, it's to fathom. And I think the reason why that's really important, I think for a lot of people, it's like, well, I don't understand it. I know he lost a bunch of money. I think this is able to kind of contextualize it for people who maybe don't get it.
And this, I'm not a historian on this, but I watched one of the movies about Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. Wasn't he making a computer system that had no operating system?
Oh, so I don't know the exact detail. I do know that they bought, was it Apple that bought out? I forget who it was. It wasn't that it didn't have the operating system. It's basically most of its function was not necessarily done by Apple. It was done by another company. Is that what you're referring to?
I thought, who was his buddy?
Wozniak?
Wozniak. I thought one of the things that Wozniak said is like, dude, we have this whole system with no operating system. Mm-hmm. I thought, and then he got hired back because it was after he got fired from Apple. Mm-hmm. And then he was off doing this other project. Mm-hmm. And I thought it seemed to be a whole bunch of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
And it looked good, but they had nothing. And then Apple was tanking and they brought him back.
Okay.
That's what I thought, but I could be wrong.
No, I do know that they purchased a ton when they were first coming out with the Macs and and even like the iPhone. The concept and the idea, the actual manufacturing of it, but the actual software and the operating system itself, I believe, I don't want to use the word outsourced, but I do think there was a purchase at some point to make it all functionable. That's my understanding of how Apple got where they're at.
There you
go. Amazon, it is announced they're going to lay off another 20,000 employees. I just saw it this morning.
Before Christmas?
Another 20,000. And it looks as if some of them are managers are included. Higher ups is what it's referred to by this story.
So riddle me this. Are we going back? Are we going to the great circle route of, are we going to have a mall, a brick and mortar mall again that's just owned by Amazon, and the thing that you want, if you can order it, and if you really want to go pick it up today, you can. Is that coming?
I think you're going to have both. I think you're going to have brick and mortar Amazon, but if Amazon's smart, which they are for the most part, what they'll do is they'll just turn their factories and warehouses and they'll just make a storefront.
Correct.
Is what they'll do. But if you want to go down and pick up whatever it is you want.
So I can order it, I can have it in 2 days, but if I need it tonight, I can order it, I can drive over and
if
get
they
it.
have. I mean, not every warehouse is
right.
going to have everything, but yeah, that's what essentially I think they're heading towards.
Okay.
I think more so than brick and mortar, I think what you're realizing and what a lot of people are realizing, managers for the last decade or so, managers have just kept hiring people underneath them. And so it was like, look how many people I manage. And it was, this like, look at everything I have. And I think now what people are realizing is like, if you're a manager, like you're not going to be able to have all these people underneath you. Like you're going to have to go and you're going to have to actually like be on the ground floor. And you're going to have to be doing some of this stuff, which some really good managers are already doing that. Like some companies, that is part of. Musk said it when he took over Twitter. He's like, if you're a manager and you're a programmer and you're not programming every day, then you're not doing your job right. Like if you have other people underneath you doing all your programming, he's like, we don't need you. And I think you're going to see that in other contexts of business.
Yes, but there's still a matter of organization.
Yeah. It would be like if you and I hired somebody to come on here and do the almost Emmy-nominated Midday Show.
Right.
And then someone was like, well, can't you guys do it? And we're like, well, we can do it, but I mean, that's essentially what's going on.
I was at a company once. Once? This is a quote. I don't know if this is, I don't know if it's offensive.
I don't know what you're talking about. I can't help
Well, I'll say it because it shouldn't be offensive, but it is.
I'll let you know. Ready, go.
Okay. I was at a company and it was a medical research company. And we had these maintenance guys who are good guys who whenever something would, not like technology maintenance, but business maintenance. And they came around and we talked because the company ended up failing.
Okay.
But in the process of while it was going, and these guys were probably in their 60s, and they looked at it and said, I've never seen a place with so many chiefs and so few Indians.
No, yeah,
and
I've heard that.
Can I say? Can you say that?
I get.
Right?
I mean,
you get the
analogy is.
You get the point. And it was like if there was an office with a nameplate on the door, like we had it filled. What did they do? I don't know, because there were like 3 people in the whole plant who did anything.
Yeah. And
then we had 5 people who had meetings.
Sure.
So yes, it is. And it's not. It's probably part of the natural cycle of things, I would guess.
Well, the other part, because I was just reading about this, the promotional side of America is going to be very, very challenging because I think a lot of Americans, like they've been told you go to college or you get a job. And then once you're in college, you get a degree and you get a better job. And then you get promoted and then you get a raise and you get, and say, even when you go get a job, right, you start on the floor and then maybe you become a supervisor and then maybe you become a manager. And we've always looked at it like if you show up and do what you're supposed to do, something should be coming around the corner. And I think what's happening now is because of the economy and where we're at, I think people are realizing like all we've done for 10 years is promote people. All we've done for 10 years is give people raises. And I think you see some of these companies and they're looking around and they're looking at all the fluff and they're like, there's no reason to have this many managers. There's no reason to have this many teams. And so I think the challenge moving forward for Americans is if you are somebody that's looking at it like, I got this degree so I could get this job. I got this job so I could get this raise. I got this raise so I could get this promotion. It might be harder come 2024 to do that than it's been in a very long time. Moving up in some of these companies is going to be difficult.
No, I agree. And what the next cycle, it has to be over the next 10 years, is back to not the laborer, but the carpenter, the electrician, the plumber. Like that's where people are going to go to. But there's also a fascinating, I just read about someone else, it was an article about some 29-year-old multiple degrees that's leaving education.
Yeah. And
that I don't know what to do to private school, but in the public school setting, the people that the parents, I don't want to say are so clueless, but the parents complain so much that they drive the good teachers and the good coaches away.
Sure.
And then they complain about who's coming in.
Right.
And, you see it in coaching all the time.
Sure.
That people complain about coaches. And listen, there's coaches that are great. There are coaches that are awful. And there's a lot. Most of them are in the middle somewhere. And people complain because, my little Jenny or Johnny deserves the greatest coach in the world. And this guy, we don't like the way he did this. And we don't like the way he did this. And then they run him off. And then they can't get an applicant. Forget about a good applicant. Like people think there are just people lined up. I was talking to a person about an academic position and one school district posted for it and got a couple applicants. One of them was okay, one of them was terrible. Another district posted relatively close by, not right next door, but posted for the same position, got none. And so people like, hey, we'll get rid of this person and we'll just find somebody better. We're in a society now where you can't find anyone at all sometimes.
Sure.
So
do you think, I wonder, because I was thinking about this because I've been on a lot of college campuses lately. I went for a couple of games
to pick up chicks.
No. Unfortunately, I am beyond that now. I think as I walk through these college campuses, I see all the kids, and I see even just people working on the campus. Do you feel like we've almost overqualified people for the things that actually need to be done?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think we went through a
there's
stretch
things
of history.
You need a college degree for. Like,
Correct.
I'm not sitting here implying you don't. Like, there's definitely things you need a certification or college degree for. There's a lot of jobs with your hands that are satisfying and that you can get a sense of purpose out of, right? Like showing up and doing this job and fixing things and building things and creating things that don't necessarily require, like, you don't need to acquire a certification or a degree to do it.
Oh, absolutely. There are lots of that I've had people say, just give me 6 weeks. Give me an intelligent person in 6 weeks and I can teach them the job.
Yeah. But I feel like here's the thing though, like, it's hard to accept that job when you've put a ton of money into getting a degree or a certification that now says you're overqualified for that.
No, I get that. Well, as a society, it was ingrained. Like, you need to go to college, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. And I heard one of the jokes was, how many sports marketing degrees do we need in the country? And it was, and
at Colorado a lot.
Yeah, well, that's true. And there's other that people just thought the only way to success was through college.
Sure.
And it was ingrained in people. It's just like now people think of health and fitness. They're like, I need to get a gym membership. Yeah. The number one thing of losing weight is diet. Sure. So but we've been ingrained in that. If you have a weight problem and you want to lose weight, that you need to go to the gym. Now, the first step is not the gym. The first step is what you take in. So,
Or going on 13-mile walks for fun.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So yeah, that's what's happened in education. And there's a point where society will step back and say, well, wait, do we really need to go do that? And I can do this job without it. I can do this job with a 2-year degree. And I think you'll have bosses that hire. The interesting thing about college, I think, is it gives the kids a chance to get a little older, because 18 is young.
Sure. And
there is a lot from our whole life to be like, oh, now we're going to go do this, and you're going to have real responsibility, and you're going to. So for a large section of people, they're just not mature enough to handle the kind of the grind of it, I think, and the day-to-dayness of adulthood. Because adulthood is a grind. Do we agree with that?
We do. We made it through my headlines before we end with Coach Prime. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, that's what I was waiting for.
That's what we're going to Coach Prime. How many years until they win the Pac-12? 3. Interesting, Mark. Over under 3.
It's the same. It's the same as the number of licks to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
Over under 3.
It's not under 3. It can't be.
Why, if USC and UCLA are leaving, why can't it be under 3?
Are USC and UCLA even good? Can they beat Utah?
USC,
can they beat Washington? Can they beat Oregon? Like, it's not that Oregon doesn't have money. I'm guessing that Deion Sanders knows a little bit about football. And I'm guessing that he is going to, recruit kids and all that. I'm also guessing that in the Pac-12, he is going up against smarter, better coaches than he's ever gone up against before. And it is now going to be harder. The other, I never thought he would go. And the other thing is, can all these kids from the South play in the cold? And how long does it take them to adjust? Because when you're playing, at Washington, at Oregon, at home in November, it's going to be chilly.
I think if you asked coaches that take over a program, like any coach who has had to take over from the bottom of Power 5 program, and you said to them, list the 100 things that were obstacles, I don't know if the things you just said are in like the top 25. Because I think the things that are real obstacles are like, how do I get top tier talent here? We just went 1-11. Deion Sanders is going to get top tier like talent.
Oh, I agree with that.
Okay. Like when I think of the challenges of taking over a Colorado, and if I make a list, I feel like half of the top 10 aren't actual problems for Deion Sanders.
Well, I would say this: the number one issue at all of football is if you want to be a top tier program, you need a top tier quarterback. Mm-hmm. And is his kid that good? That's what we're going to find out.
Well, for the first year, that's what we're going to find
out. Does he have 1 year of eligibility?
I don't know how many he has left, but he
ain't benching him.
For 1 year, it's happening. Like I guess that's my point, is for 1 year, Deion Sanders' kid is going to be the quarterback regardless of how good he is.
So you don't think you think he's benching his own kid?
I think if he doesn't produce, I said to you, it's going to be awkward. If he doesn't produce the first year, Deion Sanders isn't, like, he's not waiting. He's not waiting. He's got too much wrapped into it.
I disagree.
Waiting.
I think he's riding it out with his kid.
If Colorado goes 2-10, you think he's going to leave his kid in?
Well, if Colorado goes 2-10, it's an improvement. Like,
I understand that.
I don't. I find it hard to believe that Deion Sanders is benching his own kid. So that the immediate future of Colorado football is his kid a top tier Division I quarterback? Because it's hard to be a really good team without a top tier Division I quarterback.
I'm guessing. I would imagine his son is a Power 5 quarterback based off of his success, because Jackson State didn't just win. They trounced people.
I believe it.
So
I don't think it's a joke. Like, he's bringing his kid in, his kid's over his head. But is the kid a good quarterback, or is the kid a super quarterback?
I think at a minimum he's a good quarterback. I think there's no way he's not a good quarterback.
Well, there is a way. I mean, we assume, because some teams don't have good quarterbacks. Okay. Maybe it's over his head. I don't know. That's going to be interesting.
I just think, like, motivating kids would be a problem when you're 1-11 and you're a new coach. Getting 5-star recruits would be almost impossible.
He has a lot of
I mean, like, these things, like you're talking about the cold and I get it. Like, I'm not saying the things you're bringing up aren't things, but they're so far down the list of challenges that, like, I just look at the things that I would be worried about if I were him, and, like, there's a lot of check marks. Like, there's a lot. And here's the other thing: how many coaches get to start in a conference where he goes, okay, those 2 schools in California I should be worried about, they're not even going to be here in 2 years.
You mean Stanford and Cal?
Yeah, Stanford and Cal.
Oh, sorry.
How about the team that almost made the top 4, even though I don't think they should have? I'm just saying, it'd be like who just got the Nebraska job? Who just got the Wisconsin job? Imagine those two guys taking that job, and they know Michigan and Ohio State's out the door in 2 years. How much easier does your job become?
No, I get that.
I'm just saying.
And rules not taking anybody with them. They say all 22 starters next year can be brand new for Colorado.
I believe that.
All 22.
I believe.
No, I don't.
He said on his interview earlier, he said that he's bringing at least 11 kids from Jackson State with him.
And you already have kids tweeting who are.
We got a guy talking across the room who's not mic'd.
That's okay. They can hear.
They can hear?
Yeah. When we used to sit them on the couch.
The portal makes it fascinating, but here's the other aspect. How good's their backup? What happens if his kid gets hurt? It's not like a good backup is coming there and saying, yeah, I'm competing for the job, because he knows he has no chance to compete.
But that's why the over-under's 3, not 1.
So it depends how many years of eligibility his kid has left. So
everything you're saying I agree with, and that's if I said you over under 1 year, everything you're saying I'd be like, yeah, you're right. 3 years? Like, in 3 years, the 5-stars he's bringing in right now will be juniors. Like, Colorado can't be like a top 10 program in 3 years. I don't know.
I mean, it could be, but here's the other thing. Because they're 1-11, whatever, he brings in his guys. How good does he have to be in the first year before he's lost his luster?
At Jackson State, they weren't great his first year.
Okay, but he didn't have like 5-star transfers coming in. So if he goes in and he's 7-5, there's lots of teams that are 7-5.
Oh, 7-5. If Colorado goes 7-5 next year, look out. Like It's a problem for the West Coast if Colorado goes 7-5 next year. That's a serious problem for teams out there. If you're a team on the West Coast,
I disagree. I think he's going to get, because he'll get. They're not a 1-11 team. They're a whole new team. They're a wild. He's got 22 starting transfers coming in. Maybe one kid will make it. There has to be one good player. So they could be 7-5 next year. But to get from 7, it's the gradual climb just doesn't make it better. You don't necessarily, just because you got to 7-5 doesn't mean you're going to 12-0.
I don't disagree with that. But as like from a recruiting standpoint, like if you're a coach out there and they go 7-5, he's already getting 5-star recruits. They're 1-11. You don't think his recruiting classes are getting better if they go 7-5 next year?
Well, he's getting 5-star recruits down a 1-11 team because they know they show up and they play.
No, he's getting 5-star recruits because they know the NIL money and the eyeballs. That's the place to go.
That's a factor. The NIL money is a factor.
I think I told you about the Coach Prime on Amazon. They're doing the docuseries. I'm assuming it's going to continue. I'm assuming they'll do the Colorado version of it. I mean, you're going to be on Amazon Prime Video. You're going to be on YouTube. You're going to be on Wellness Media. Like, you are everywhere if you're a 5-star recruit committed to Colorado.
You've seen the interview. Is he coming?
Who's he?
Deion.
Oh, he's coming. Then let's talk about that very briefly to end the show. There was a video. You can find it on YouTube, about 12, 13 minutes. And it's Sanders talking to the Colorado football players for the first time ever. The AD introduces them, comes into the room, talks for 10 minutes. If I were a kid, go and watch it. If I were a kid sitting in that room, I don't know if I would have taken it positively. I might have stood up and left if I were a kid in Colorado.
Well, yeah, the kids in the room. He doesn't care about the kids in the room, and he kind of made that. It was a Baptist preacher revival, except it had nothing. It was about football.
But here's the difference. It's one thing, like, if you don't care about me because I'm not your recruit, I can, at least as like a 20-year-old kid, I think I can function. Like, I can understand that. To make it a circus, to make it a show, where you're basically lecturing me now.
The show.
Like, I understand that, but that's my point is, like, as a 20-year-old kid, you can tell the person that's going in there and being like, here's the facts. I don't know if you're going to be here. That's one thing. When you come in, and it's not enough to just tell me, it's got to now be entertaining. Like, it's like you said, it was a Baptist revival. Like, now all of a sudden I'm a kid sitting there. I don't know if I sit for the whole thing. I was shocked. Every kid just sat there. I was shocked.
Nah, you can't.
You think they're that desperate for a spot?
You would sit there because you would be afraid. If a couple kids got up and left, then a couple more would have got up.
Okay.
You're afraid to get up and leave.
Because
as he's asking, are you in?
Of Deion Sanders?
Both. Just the whole setting. Like, I don't know.
As a parent, how would you have taken it? Jimmy's playing.
I'm
Jimmy's
not
the backup quarterback at Colorado.
Well, if he's backup quarterback, you're like, find the portal.
Jimmy was the starting quarterback at Colorado.
No, I mean, if he's a different position.
You go to YouTube. Jimmy plays for Colorado. You wake up and you see the YouTube video. As a parent, how do you feel?
Yeah, I don't think it's great, but he doesn't care because, again, there are 50-some parents out there who want their kid there and will be thrilled that the kid's there. I think whenever you get a coaching change and this isn't who recruited us and this didn't.
But that's not how most of them here's the thing. I'm not even condemning what he did. Like, I'm not even against what Deion Sanders did. I'm saying as a person, as a kid who sat in a room on a college campus, like a college locker room, or as a parent, I just wonder.
I get it.
It's different. It's different.
It's very different.
That was not your typical transition. That's not usually the message that is brought in. Like, when Penn State went through it and O'Brien came into the room,
right.
Can you imagine if O'Brien walked in the room and gave that speech at Penn State? I mean, I don't think anybody would have been mad if the kids got up and left.
But the portal didn't exist then.
I get it. No,
it is a different world.
Yes, you are correct. It is.
Because anywhere, even if Deion say the left tackle is good, and Deion wanted him, and the guy got mad and left, Deion can go in the portal and get the best left tackle available, and he can say, ours just left, the starting job is yours. Mm-hmm. So it's all. Bill Parcells used to do this. Bill Parcells didn't go to mediocre teams. He went to terrible teams. had teams that had terrible records,
Sure.
but were undercoached,
Sure.
and he could turn them around quickly.
Yeah.
He did it with the Jets. He did it with the Cowboys. So there's an advantage. It might be better to be 1-11.
So 3 years from now, where is Colorado? Which was the whole question that started this.
It's kind of right there in the Rockies. It's a little bit. It's close to Wyoming.
Where are the Colorado Buffaloes football team?
I mean, I think they are well, it's a tough question. It all goes back to quarterback because
they're going to get a quarterback.
They're going to, but they're going to need to get a quarterback that's willing to come sit until Deion's kid graduates.
But he's already been in college 2 or 3 years.
He can't be there forever.
No.
And then it has to do with like the next quarterback. And if I'm a corner, if I'm a D-back when it goes, if I'm a quarterback, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I suspect that they are an 8-4, 9-3.
When you and I first talked about it's funny how hindsight is 20/20. I would say to wrap it up, you and I were very eminent that there's no way he would go to Colorado.
I thought it was too cold. I thought it was too cold.
In hindsight now, like when I was watching that video earlier and I was reading about some of the stuff, they're 1-11. There's nowhere to go but up. And you and I talked about, like, once you take one of these Power 5 jobs, like there are no more kind of like pat on the backs. When you go to 1-11 Colorado, maybe there is.
Especially when you've sucked for 20 years.
Yep. So lots of upside. You get to join a conference that's considered a Power 5 conference. But it's
going to get worse.
It's going to get worse. So USC and UCLA is out the door. In hindsight, looking at it now, I think you and I were very wrong.
To me, it's just about the cold. It was all geographically.
Interesting.
He's a Southern guy coaching Southern kids, and now you're going to go have to play in the cold.
Interesting. I just don't think of the weather. I think if the weather mattered that much, I think the Big Ten would suck. Like, I think.
But they're used to it.
Like, how would Washington or Oregon
or here, I'll show you that. And you probably didn't know this, but this is how USC plays Notre Dame every year.
Okay.
When they play at Notre Dame,
mm-hmm.
they play in the middle of the season.
Mm-hmm.
When they play at USC, they play on Thanksgiving weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Because USC won't go to Notre Dame on Thanksgiving weekend because it's too cold.
No, I get that. To me, that makes sense. To make a coaching decision, like a career decision, like a life-altering decision based off of the cold, when there's only 50 of these jobs, I mean, there's 5 power conferences.
Right. But all his roots are in the South.
I get that.
He grew up in the South. He went to college in the South. He coached in the South.
There's 50 of these jobs.
No, I do get that.
I can't wrap my head around the number one factor being that it's cold.
But don't you think, my thought is if he'd have waited one more year, like I know this story, Mike Bray, who's the coach at Notre Dame, he's still at Notre Dame, isn't he? Was a coach at Delaware, was very successful at Delaware. He'd been an assistant at Duke, and he was offered Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned it down.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, why are you turning down Auburn to stay at Delaware?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, because it's going to be really hard to win at Auburn. Mm-hmm. They have no tradition. I'm stable here at Delaware.
Sure.
And I think if we keep winning, I will get a better offer.
Sure.
And he got one at Notre Dame, and he's been there ever since. So I think if Deion would have stayed at Jackson State for another year and won, that a Southern offer would have come, but his kid would have got a year older.
So the difference in the two stories is that Deion Sanders just went 12-0. Mike Bray
that's fair.
Like, if you're Deion Sanders,
you think his stock was never higher.
Your level of success, what are you going to do? Go 12-0 again?
Like, I know what you mean. That's a fair point.
If you come back next year and slip, listen, if you go 11-1 at Jackson State, I don't think you're any worse of a coach, but the whole persona of like Coach Prime, I'm coming. Like, does it lose its juju if you go 11-1 next year?
Not only is he coming, he's bringing his luggage.
He's bringing his, and it's Louis, baby. It's Louis.
I'll tell you, it is entertaining. It is. He's
a
Baptist preacher, and it is fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. And thank you to Weis Markets. Holiday season, be sure to go there for all of your grocery needs, anything that you may need to grab. Weis Markets, you can use Weis to Go to order online and pick it up, weismarkets.com. How'd I do?
You did very well.
Not bad. Next time I'm going to try my Gary Chrisman voice when I do it.
Good luck.
I'm going to try it. It's hard.
He has multiple
hard to do it,
voices, so
Gary.
you can pick one of several.
Yeah, no, it's hard. It's hard to do a Gary impression. Really, really.
It was. Now, I grew up with Gary Chrisman because my dad had it on. Like that was back in the day that, there was a radio on in the morning while you were getting around going to school. And my dad always had the Chrisman show on.
Sure.
It was a long time before I knew that he did Rodney the Boy.
Yeah.
That was him doing
he
the
was
voice.
doing different things.
And his ability to go back and forth between and have a conversation with himself, with Gary and Rodney, is the smoothness of it is why I had no idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, be that as it may.
No, it's impressive. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. We will see you guys tomorrow.
Later.